Good morning, everybody. You are currently listening to a Tall Girls podcast hosted by a tall girl named India. I hope everyone who's tuning in today is doing super fantastic. Before I get into this episode, I do want to say make sure you follow me on my socials at a Tall Girls podcast on Instagram, TikTok, and Pinterest so that you can stay up to date on all of the latest podcast episodes and catch a glimpse of my everyday life. Also, feel free to leave me a review and let me know how tall you are. I'm genuinely curious. Everything is going to be linked in the description. Happy almost May. We're still currently in April. We're at the end of April now. By the time this episode is up, May is actually next week or this week. No, it's next week. Gosh, I'm really getting ahead of my time now, but I just think that I'm excited to just graduate and move on with my life. And honestly, I think I'm ready for summer. If you live anywhere in the Northeast, you know that the weather has been bipolar, I guess you could say. Doesn't really know if it wants to be winter or summer. One day it'll be like 80 degrees in the high 70s, and then the next it'll be like 40 degrees, super windy and freezing. I don't know what to think at this point. But summer is almost here and I'm not trying to rush it. I'm trying to live in the moment, live in the present, be mindful, practice mindfulness, all that stuff. But summer will be a little nice right now. Anyways, let me move on because this is not a Weather Girls podcast, it's a Tall Girls podcast. So, I have a question for y'all. Have you ever been in a group of people where you kind of feel like the outlier? Like you stick out like a sore thumb? Like the people around you don't really understand you? Almost like you don't belong? I could definitely say that some of us tall girls have been there before, especially growing up. It can definitely be a frustrating thing to experience. It could be a nerve-wracking thing to experience. It just, especially when you're trying to find that community, it can get a little scary because as much as we try to promote this idea of, being independent, I don't need anyone to make me happy. I don't need anyone for this, that, and the other. And, we can find company in being alone and get comfortable with being alone. And it's good to be alone. Like, yes, like 110%. It's good to find value within yourself. It's good to sometimes just spend time with yourself and to get to know yourself. And having a certain level of independence is really good for your confidence and your self-esteem. It's also important to remember that as humans, as much as we want to be independent in this hyper independency world or whatever, it's important to remember that we are social creatures, we are social beings, and at some point in time, we have to interact with others. We have to be, first of all, we exist on a planet with like billions of other people. So we kind of can't escape that. And then on top of that, we crave finding people who can relate to us. We crave finding a group of people who accept us for who we are. And at some degree, hopefully not at like a super high one, to some degree, we want validation from others. It's just how it is. It's just how we are as humans. And especially when you're young and you're growing up and you're trying to figure yourself out, you're also trying to figure out who you want to surround yourself with. You just want to find your people. You just want to find a place where you feel like you belong. And this shows up in many ways, like physical appearance, like height or even skin color, hair, clothing and fashion sense, or religion, or even mental issues and similar experiences. And feeling so out of place, feeling like you're not in the right place for you, can be extremely difficult and have an impact on your mental health and your self-esteem and confidence. I can say for sure that I've definitely been there. Growing up, I was the tallest girl in my grade. Every single year up until 8th grade when my one tall friend happened to grow slightly taller than me. But even so, I was still in the back in the center of the class photo. Yes, I was on my school's basketball team for like a year. It was definitely an interesting time. Don't get me wrong, there were a lot of good times, but there were also pretty bad times. Around the time of like middle school and like beginning of high school, that was the height of the struggles, I would say, the height of the insecurities. Peak bullying, peak height shaming. And that was kind of due to the fact that I stuck out like a sore thumb. Like I said before, I was the tallest girl in my grade. I was the tallest, I think, actually in my grade until 8th grade. And A lot of my friends, a lot of my peers, a lot of my classmates, they were all shorter than me. Some of them significantly shorter than me. I don't know. Maybe they had late growth spurts. Maybe it just wasn't in their genetics. Who knows? But I'm not here to determine that. The point here is I was surrounded by a lot of people who were shorter than me. Like, even my teachers were shorter than me. Like, I was taller than a lot of my teachers, except the one, oh my gosh, except the one teacher. I did a story time on this way back when, except the one teacher who was the tallest teacher in the school who happened to destroy me in a volleyball game. But going back to my previous point, it's just interesting how mean little kids can be. Having mainly short friends was the reason I slouched so much. Having mainly short friends was a big reason why I started to hate my height. No, it's definitely not their fault that I had my insecurities and my posture issues, but I will definitely say that it did have a big impact on me. Being the tall girl in a friend group is very interesting. I'm not saying that I don't like my short friends, because I do. But there are certain times where I feel left out of some conversations, like conversations about clothes, for example, or they just don't fully understand certain struggles that I endure on a daily basis. And it's not necessarily for them to understand everything, because, you know, everybody has their own struggles, especially struggles that are unique to them and their situation. So I'm not saying that they absolutely have to understand everything that I'm going through, that they absolutely have to relate to me. But sometimes it's nice to just have somebody else who just gets it. And that plays a huge part in not feeling like you're alone. We don't necessarily advocate for complaining all the time, because, it's good to be grateful for the things that you have. But, it's nice to just like kind of talk about the struggles every once in a while, and even provide each other with resources and advice. And then, oh my gosh, I will never forget the day in 6th grade when another tall girl entered the classroom. I don't think you understand how happy I was in that moment. You know that song that's like, "Twin, where have you been?" If that moment occurred today, that song would have played in my head. And it's so funny because people would say that we look like we could be sisters, that we looked similar. We were tall and lanky, but we also were light skinned with kind of similar hair. I feel like what could differentiate us was the eyes, but still, I feel like siblings could also have different color eyes, so it doesn't matter. So people honestly thought that we were related. But I rode with her for like 3 years and like a small part of high school until we kind of fell out of touch because we just went on about our separate lives. I think that having somebody else who is tall also kind of like helped me appreciate my height more. And I just felt a little bit better. Not a whole lot, but it was a start. I don't know. There's just something about being friends with other tall women. There's just this level of understanding and trust and belonging. We get each other. We've been through similar struggles, and we know how to lift each other up. You guys could share tips and resources, especially resources. Can share laughs and stories and complaints. All of that helps to develop some sense of relatability. And, as time goes on, you will be able to feel less alone. Like, wow, I'm not the only one who struggles with this. Like, me and my other tall friends, me and my tall community, like, we can get through this together. And I'm not gonna lie to you, I feel like finding another tall person to be friends with can be difficult depending on where you live. Like, if you live in a country where everybody's just naturally tall, then I don't know, like, are people bullied for being tall in a place where everybody's naturally tall? Do you experience those types of struggles? Maybe not. But if you live in a place where a lot of people are shorter, the average height is much lower in that particular place, in that city, in that country, wherever it may be, then it can be hard to find that other person who can understand and just share those experiences with you. I think my biggest tip, which can be controversial, is to go online. Like, I don't think okay. See, Online could be a very good and a bad place, especially with social media, because social media can be so good in finding your community, especially like right at your fingertips. But like, we should try to stay safe. We gotta vet these people, if you know what I mean. Because people are scammers, people are creeps, people will try to see what they can get out of you, especially if you're a young person on the internet. But there's such a strong tall girl community online. I like to say that we're small and mighty because let's face it, tall women are a small percentage of the population, but it's one of the most supportive groups I've ever been in, especially on social media, especially on Instagram and TikTok. But I feel like I found like some really cool ones on Instagram. And like I said before, it's really important to be safe online. If you're avidly posting about being a tall woman, like creeps are gonna show up. Creeps are going to be in those DMs. But we try to block them, we try to ignore them, delete the messages, etc. But like I said, it's important to be safe online when trying to find your community. So I'm saying all of this to say that one of the best ways to be able to get over that insecurity of your height and feel less alone in this process of trying to find your confidence and self esteem as a tall woman is to find your community. Because finding that community and developing that sense of relatability and belonging, even, and being able to get advice and resources and stuff can help tremendously. And one of those first steps of trying to find that tall girl community is by following yours truly at a Tall Girls podcast. We are a nice community over here, and this is a safe and judgment free zone, no matter your height, honestly. So, first step, make sure you follow me and hit me up on my socials at a Tall Girls podcast. And thank you so much for tuning in today. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate you. Yeah, hit me up on my socials. As I said before, we could talk about whatever experiences you're having as a tall girl, whatever experiences that you had when you were younger as a tall person. We could also chat about that as well. Anything that's reasonable, of course. I'm down. And I hope you have a good rest of your day, night, week, month, year, life, whatever it is for you. And I'll catch you in the next one. Good night and goodbye.